the quantum messenger who spoke in light and changed every world. In the beginning, the stars were silent. Not because they did not shine, but because no one was listening the right way. Across the vast expanse of the multiverse, countless worlds thrived, struggled, and faded, each unaware of the others. Time flowed differently everywhere. Space folded upon itself like paper, hiding secrets no one could understand. Then, one day, a light appeared. It was not a star. It did not belong to any galaxy. It moved faster than thought, yet slower than the heartbeat of a universe. Those who first saw it called it impossible. It shimmered with colors that had no names, patterns that bent logic, and pulses that resonated in the depths of the soul rather than the eyes. The messenger emerged from that light. It was not human, nor machine, nor any living thing known. It was all at once a thought, a sound, a shimmer. It carried knowledge, but not the kind one could read in books. It carried understanding. It spoke in light, bending photons into words that brushed the mind like warm wind. On the first world it visited, the mountains wept and rivers froze. People looked to the sky in fear, expecting fire or storm, but found only presence. The messenger's light entered their eyes, then their hearts, and finally their minds. And in that instant, the inhabitants understood. They saw the threads connecting every world, every life, every choice. "I am the quantum messenger," it said, though the sound was more feeling than noise. "I am here to show you what you are not yet ready to see, the unity that binds all existence." No one could answer, for words seemed trivial. The messenger's light continued, flowing through the cities, forests, oceans. It illuminated memories, possibilities, and futures that had not yet existed. Some wept. Some screamed. Some simply fell to their knees, overcome by the clarity. Among them was a young scientist named Lyra. She had spent her life studying particles and probabilities, always chasing the patterns of chaos. When the light touched her mind, it did not speak to her as a teacher, but as a friend. It showed her the quantum threads that linked every thought, every world, every soul. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you asked questions no one else dared," the light replied. "Because you see not just with your eyes, but with your intentions. Because the universe has chosen you to listen, and then to act." The messenger moved on to the next world before anyone could stop it. Entire civilizations felt the absence immediately, as if a star had blinked and left a hole in the sky. Yet, the echoes of its visit remained. Those who had seen the light carried it within them, and slowly, they began to change. Lyra stayed behind. She could not follow. Her world was fragile, her people unready for the vastness she now glimpsed. But she remembered everything. Nights were spent in contemplation, days in experiments. She began to translate what she had seen into language humans could comprehend. Equations, patterns, machines that hummed with resonance. Every breakthrough was a step closer to understanding the messenger's message. And across the multiverse, in worlds both vibrant and dying, the quantum messenger moved, leaving traces of light, knowledge, and hope. Yet, for every world it touched, questions grew. Why was it moving? What did it truly want? And could anyone ever meet it again? Lyra could not sleep. Every night, she felt the pulse of the messenger's light still lingering in her mind, like a soft echo vibrating in her chest. She began to notice patterns in the world around her, subtle connections no one else seemed to see. Leaves would quiver before rain. Animals moved in silent coordination, and even people's thoughts sometimes mirrored each other across vast distances. She realized that the messenger had shown her more than just connections between worlds. It had shown her the hidden currents of existence, the invisible threads that guided every action, every choice. But understanding was not enough. Knowledge without action was like a river trapped beneath ice. Lyra knew she had to do something, though she did not yet know what. Her first experiments were small. She focused on light itself, trying to replicate the messenger's patterns. Using prisms, lasers, and mirrors, she created intricate lattices of photons that moved in impossible sequences. When she observed them, she felt the faintest whisper of the messenger's presence. It was as if the patterns themselves were alive, hinting at truths she had not yet grasped. The breakthrough came one evening when Lyra realized she could encode not just information, but intention, into the light. Her machine pulsed and shimmered, and suddenly, she saw visions of other worlds, glimpses of civilizations untouched by her own. She saw oceans of liquid crystal, forests floating in the sky, cities built on clouds of energy. And in every vision, she felt the same pulse of the messenger's presence. She understood then, the quantum messenger was not just traveling, it was weaving. It was connecting worlds, bridging the impossible, planting seeds of transformation. And if she could learn to speak its language, she might continue its work. The next morning, she began her first communication attempt. Lyra created a chamber of light that resonated with her thoughts. She focused on a simple intention: to reach the messenger, to ask why it had chosen her. The room shimmered, and a single thread of radiant energy appeared. It hovered, quivering with possibility. "Are you there?" she whispered. The thread pulsed, then expanded into a burst of light that filled the room. She did not see the messenger in form, but she felt its awareness, curious and vast. For the first time, she realized she was not just a witness. She was now a participant. "You have learned quickly," the voice of light said, more felt than heard. "Few are able to perceive beyond their own world. Fewer still can act. You are among them." "Why me?" Lyra asked again, her voice trembling with awe. "Why show me this?" "Because you will help guide the others," the messenger replied. "The threads of worlds are fragile. Some are ready to grow, others to wither. You will learn to balance them, to spread understanding where it is needed most. But be warned, not all will welcome this change. Some fear connection, fear truth, fear light itself." The warning weighed heavily on her. She had seen the reactions of her own people, some frightened, some inspired. But she knew the messenger spoke of more than just her world. Across the multiverse, countless civilizations would react in unpredictable ways. And yet, she felt an undeniable determination. She could not let fear stop her. Over the following weeks, Lyra refined her methods. She developed machines that could send pulses of intention through light, touching minds at a distance. She practiced on plants first, observing how they responded, then animals, then finally humans. Every success brought a ripple of awareness, a hint of the messenger's vision spreading across her world. One night, as she worked alone in her laboratory, the light returned, not a thread this time, but a torrent of radiance that filled every corner of her mind. Visions poured in. Worlds on the brink of collapse, societies torn by conflict, civilizations poised for enlightenment. She realized the messenger's journey was far larger than she had imagined. Its mission was not simply to teach, it was to harmonize, to prevent universes from unraveling. And Lyra understood her own role. She was no longer a scientist in isolation. She was a conduit, a bridge, a voice of the light that had first spoken to her. If she could master the messenger's language, if she could amplify its message, she could become part of a force capable of changing every world. But the challenge was greater than she anticipated. The light revealed not only the beauty of connection but the dangers of interference. Some worlds resisted, their leaders blind to the threads that bound them. Some civilizations would see the light as a threat, attacking without understanding. And Lyra realized that guiding change required more than knowledge. It required courage, compassion, and sacrifice. As dawn broke over her city, Lyra looked at the sky, knowing that somewhere, the quantum messenger continued its journey. She made a silent promise. She would follow its path, one world at a time, and help the light speak where it could not. She did not yet know how, or if she would succeed, but she knew one thing with certainty. The multiverse would never be the same again. The days passed in a blur of light and calculation. Lyra had grown accustomed to the messenger's presence in her mind, yet she knew she could not rely on it forever. She needed to act, to reach beyond her own world. Using the machines she had constructed, she began attempting inter-world communication. Each pulse of light she sent carried her thoughts, intentions, and questions. Each flicker was a message, a fragile thread cast into the void. Her first success came unexpectedly. A response returned, not words, not images, but feelings. A world unlike her own was touching her consciousness. Its skies burned with emerald fire, oceans shimmered with liquid silver, and its inhabitants were delicate beings, almost transparent, moving like living prisms of light. They did not understand her language, yet they understood her purpose. The messenger had taught her well. Intention spoke louder than words. Lyra focused her mind. "We mean no harm. We wish only to understand, to connect." The beings responded with a pulse of their own, rhythmic and cautious. They had lived isolated for millennia, afraid of outside influence. Yet the resonance of her light reached them, and slowly, they began to trust. Through these pulses, Lyra shared knowledge, how their energy could harmonize with other worlds, how cooperation could prevent their forests from fading and their oceans from stagnating. It was the first small victory, yet Lyra sensed unease. Not all worlds would respond as willingly. Not all civilizations could embrace connection. And soon, she would discover the dangers that came with reaching too far. Several cycles later, she attempted contact with a more volatile world. Its cities hovered above molten chasms, powered by fire and magnetism, and its people were strong-willed and suspicious. The first pulse of light she sent was met with violence. Towers of energy flared in response, shaking the skies, as though the world itself were rejecting her intrusion. Lyra recoiled, her hands trembling over the controls. She realized that connection was not just about sending light, it was about timing, understanding, and empathy. She paused, reflecting on the messenger's words. Some fear connection, fear truth, fear light itself. Determined, she studied their patterns. She observed their conflicts, their rituals, their fears. Slowly, she tuned her pulses, weaving them carefully into rhythms that matched the world's own vibrations. It took days, but eventually, a single tower of light flickered in acknowledgement. A dialogue began, fragile and tense, but real. Lyra felt the weight of responsibility. She was no longer a passive observer of the multiverse, she was an active participant. Every choice she made rippled across countless worlds. If she erred, civilizations could collapse, mistrust could spread, and the messenger's mission could fail. Yet she also felt exhilaration. She was witnessing the universe as it truly was, a living, breathing network of life, each world a note in an eternal symphony. In the quiet moments, she remembered the messenger's first words, "You will help guide the others." She realized that guiding meant more than sending light. It meant listening, learning, and sometimes waiting. Patience became her greatest tool, as crucial as her machines or her knowledge of quantum threads. Then, the first warning came. While observing a distant network of stars, she noticed an anomaly, a pulse of dark energy moving against the natural flow. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet its intent was clear. Something in the multiverse sought to disrupt the connections she was forming. The light she sent to bridge worlds could be twisted, redirected, or destroyed. Fear gnawed at her. The messenger had not prepared her for opposition. She thought of the fiery world, the hesitant beings of silver seas, and countless others she had yet to reach. And she realized, the multiverse was not just a canvas of potential, it was a battleground of forces, some seeking harmony, some seeking control. Yet Lyra did not hesitate. She began preparing defenses, weaving protective pulses into her light, creating feedback loops that could shield connections from corruption. She experimented with ways to amplify trust and intention, to make the resonance of goodwill stronger than any opposing force. Late one night, as she worked tirelessly, the messenger appeared again, not fully, but as a ripple of light that filled the laboratory. "You have begun," it said, the words washing over her mind like a river. "But the true test lies ahead. Forces that resist change will grow. Shadows will rise in the spaces between worlds. You must learn to protect the light, and yourself." "I understand," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I will not let the multiverse fall. I will guide it as you taught me." "Remember this," the messenger warned. "Light alone is not enough. Intention, courage, and sacrifice, these will shape the outcome. And some worlds may never be ready. You must decide where to act, and where to wait." The ripple faded, leaving her alone in the glow of her machines. Lyra looked at the stars outside her window, each one a potential world she could touch, each one a challenge waiting to be met. She knew her journey was only beginning, and that the path ahead would be filled with both wonder and peril. And yet, she felt hope. For the first time, she truly understood what the messenger had meant. The multiverse could change, if guided with care, intention, and light. And she would be the one to carry that change forward, one world at a time. The anomaly grew faster than Lyra anticipated. At first, it had been a faint ripple, a subtle distortion in the threads connecting worlds. But over weeks, it expanded, infecting connections, twisting the light she had carefully sent. Entire civilizations began to resist her pulses, not out of fear, but from something darker, something deliberate. She realized with a jolt, this was not random. A force existed, moving through the multiverse in opposition to the messenger, seeking to sever the threads, to spread isolation instead of unity. Lyra had seen resistance in the fiery world, but now it was everywhere. The light she sent to guide had become a battlefield. Her laboratory, once a place of discovery, now felt like a command center on the front lines of an invisible war. Machines hummed and pulsed with energy as Lyra worked tirelessly to understand the anomaly. She mapped the flows of distorted light, tracing them to their sources, trying to predict where the next disruption would strike. Then came the first direct confrontation. One of her strongest pulses, intended for a world of floating gardens and crystal rivers, was met with a surge of dark energy. The pulse recoiled violently, slamming against her protective loops. Machines shuddered, glass cracked, and the laboratory was filled with a blinding brilliance that left her temporarily disoriented. Through the haze, she felt a presence, not the messenger, but something opposite, cold, calculating, and intent on undoing her work. It was aware of her, watching her, challenging her. Lyra understood then that her mission was no longer just about connection, it was about survival. Days turned into nights without rest. Lyra adjusted her machines, building new harmonics, layering intentions with protective resonance, encoding not just knowledge but trust, empathy, and courage into each pulse. Every time she sent light into the multiverse, she held her breath, hoping it would reach the right minds before the darkness could corrupt it. The messenger returned briefly, a gentle wave of illumination filling her mind. "You are ready," it said. "The shadow grows, but so does your power. You must act with both precision and care. The first battles are always the hardest. Remember, even in conflict, the goal is not to destroy, but to awaken." "I understand," Lyra replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "But how do I fight something that moves between worlds, that bends the threads themselves?" "By becoming part of the network," the messenger said. "By aligning yourself with the rhythm of the multiverse. You are not alone. Every world that listens strengthens you. Every connection you preserve is a shield. Trust in the light, but do not rely on it blindly." Encouraged, Lyra intensified her efforts. She reached out to the world of floating gardens, sending pulses carefully attuned to their own unique rhythms. The inhabitants responded cautiously, but they responded. Light met shadow in their skies, colliding and weaving into intricate patterns. Slowly, the dark energy retreated, repelled not by force, but by the resonance of trust and understanding. It was the first real victory, but it came at a cost. Lyra felt the strain in her mind and body. The threads of connection were powerful, but carrying the weight of multiple worlds left her exhausted. She realized that to guide the multiverse, she could not act alone. She would need allies, those who could feel, understand, and spread the messenger's light in ways she could not reach alone. She began seeking them. Not through machines or light, but through intuition and observation. She looked for beings who were sensitive to the threads, who could perceive the subtle connections between worlds. Some were scientists like her, some philosophers, some children who had never learned fear. She sent gentle pulses, reaching out, testing, waiting for a response. One replied. A young scholar from a distant world of molten seas and obsidian cliffs. The pulse came back as a pattern of intricate colors, a language of intention and emotion that mirrored her own. It was the first true partnership she had formed. Together, they began experimenting with joint pulses, combining their understanding and harmonics to strengthen their reach. With every success, Lyra felt a spark of hope. The multiverse could be saved, one connection at a time. But she knew the darkness was patient. It waited, observing, learning, and striking where the light was weakest. The messenger appeared one final time before departing. "You have learned well," it said, "but the greatest challenge lies ahead. Worlds will resist, hearts will falter, and the threads may snap. You must lead, but also protect, for your strength will inspire or fail those who follow. Choose carefully where to act, and never forget the light is more than illumination. It is understanding, compassion, and unity." Lyra watched it vanish, a trail of colors fading into the infinite void. Alone, she looked at the multiverse with determination. The war had only just begun, but she was ready. Every pulse she sent, every world she touched, was a step toward change. And she would not stop until the messenger's vision was realized, no matter the cost. The first alliance changed everything. Lyra and the young scholar from the world of molten seas, named Cairo, developed a new way to send pulses together, combining their intentions and harmonics. When their light merged, it resonated farther and deeper than either could achieve alone. Worlds that had resisted Lyra's solo attempts now began to respond, curious and cautious. Encouraged, Lyra and Cairo reached out to more beings. Some were scientists, others artists, and some children who had never learned fear or prejudice. Each new ally brought a unique understanding of their world, a fresh way to connect and amplify the messenger's message. Together, they began forming a network, a lattice of light that spanned multiple dimensions. Yet with each new connection, the shadow grew stronger. It moved quickly, exploiting hesitation, doubt, and fear. Lyra saw entire civilizations teeter on the edge of rejection, their hearts closing against the pulses of intention. Cities froze in confusion, rivers stagnated, and forests withered. The darkness thrived where hope faltered. One day, the Alliance reached a critical world, a realm of floating archipelagos and endless skies. Its people were proud and independent, their leaders wary of outside influence. Lyra's pulse arrived, soft and deliberate, carrying the resonance of unity, yet the response was violent. The leaders declared her light a threat, summoning storms of resistance that shattered her machine's protections. Lyra and Cairo struggled to maintain connection, but the pulse was pulled apart by fear and distrust. For the first time, Lyra felt real despair. She had prepared, guided, and collaborated, yet it was not enough. The shadow's influence had created a storm she could not calm with light alone. But then, she remembered the messenger's teaching: intention, courage, and sacrifice. These will shape the outcome. She realized she could not impose understanding, she could only invite it. She withdrew the direct pulse and sent a smaller, gentler thread of light, a whisper rather than a command, an offering rather than a demand. Slowly, the response came. A child, curious and fearless, reached out through the thread. The child's mind shimmered with openness, touching the pulse with wonder rather than fear. Through the child, the light spread subtly among the people, growing quietly, patiently, like a seed waiting for rain. Lyra realized that sometimes change could not be forced, it had to be nurtured. The victory was small, yet profound. It taught her that guiding worlds was not just a battle of power or knowledge, it was a test of patience, empathy, and insight. Each world required a different approach, each civilization a unique touch. Lyra and her allies adapted, learning to weave their pulses with cultural understanding, emotional resonance, and subtlety. Meanwhile, the shadow's attacks grew more coordinated. Lyra noticed patterns in its strategy, recognizing intelligence behind the chaos. It targeted the weakest threads first, seeking to destabilize connections before they could grow strong. It was no longer a passive force, it was an active adversary, one that watched, learned, and anticipated. One night, as Lyra studied the patterns, she saw a familiar ripple, an echo of the messenger. The messenger's voice filled her mind, calm yet urgent. "You have built a foundation," it said, "but the shadow is testing you. It seeks not only to stop the light but to corrupt it. You must prepare for worlds that will fall and alliances that will be betrayed. The multiverse is fragile, and your choices now will ripple farther than you can see." "I understand," Lyra replied. "But we cannot stop. Even if some fall, we must continue to build connections, to spread understanding wherever we can." "Good," the messenger said. "Remember, every choice carries consequence. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. You are not alone. Trust your network, for their strength is now as vital as your own." The alliance grew stronger. Lyra and Cairo trained their new partners, teaching them to sense the threads, to weave pulses of light with precision, and to recognize the shadow's distortions. Together, they coordinated across worlds, sending waves of intention that strengthened fragile connections and stabilized unstable civilizations. And yet, despite their successes, the shadow remained. It moved like a predator in the gaps between worlds, striking when the alliance's attention wavered. Lyra realized that the multiverse was now a living battlefield, one where victory required vigilance, creativity, and unity. As she gazed at the threads connecting the worlds, shimmering faintly in her mind's eye, Lyra felt both fear and determination. The challenge was immense, the risks higher than ever, yet the promise of harmony and understanding kept her moving forward. The quantum messenger had chosen her for a reason, and she would honor that choice, no matter the darkness that awaited. The shadow struck with precision. It had learned from every encounter, every failure, every subtle pulse of light Lyra had sent. In a coordinated wave, it assaulted multiple worlds at once. Cities trembled, Forests rotted, oceans churned, and civilizations teetered on the edge of collapse. The threads of connection, painstakingly woven over weeks, began to fray. Lyra felt the attacks in her mind before she saw them in the skies. Pulses of distortion, dark and jagged, ripped through her carefully calibrated light. Her machine screamed with energy surges, warning her of imminent failure. She called out to her allies, and together they worked feverishly, sending counterpulses, reinforcing weakened threads, and shielding the most vulnerable worlds. But it was not enough. One world, a delicate realm of floating crystal forests, began to fall. The inhabitants panicked as their environment destabilized. Lyra watched helplessly, knowing that she could not save them all. She focused every ounce of energy on stabilizing the central pulse, hoping to contain the damage. Cairo's voice came through the network, tense but determined. "We can't hold it everywhere. We have to choose. Where do we put our strength?" Lyra's mind raced. The messenger had warned her, every choice carries consequence. She could not save all worlds at once, yet inaction would allow the shadow to spread further. With a heavy heart, she made the decision. Focus on the worlds with the strongest potential to resist and stabilize. The others, we must mitigate the damage as best we can. The Alliance split their efforts, some reinforcing key threads while others attempted to protect the weaker worlds. The battle of light and shadow raged across the multiverse. Pulses collided, creating patterns of brilliance and chaos, illuminating the skies of countless worlds with ephemeral colors that no being could fully comprehend. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra realized something crucial. The shadow was not merely destructive. It was learning, adapting, and exploiting weaknesses in intention and emotion. Any doubt, fear, or hesitation in their network amplified its power. To win, they would need perfect focus, complete trust, and unwavering resolve. She gathered her allies into a central pulse, concentrating their combined energies and intentions. They synchronized their thoughts, emotions, and wills, forming a single resonance strong enough to counter the shadow's assault. The pulse expanded, reaching into the fraying threads, stabilizing connections, and restoring balance in the most critical worlds. The shadow recoiled, its dark tendrils snapping under the strength of unified light. But it was not defeated. It withdrew, retreating into the void between worlds, waiting for the next opportunity. Lyra knew this was only the beginning. The aftermath left Lyra exhausted. Many worlds were saved, but some had been irreparably damaged. She mourned the losses quietly, knowing they were the cost of the larger mission. Yet she also felt pride in the alliance they had built. Together, they had held back an enemy that could have unraveled the multiverse itself. The messenger appeared briefly, a ripple of radiant light washing over her mind. "You have faced the shadow and survived," it said. "You have learned to lead, to choose, and to endure. But know this, the true test is not just in defending the multiverse, but in creating it. You must now move from reaction to creation, guiding worlds to thrive, not merely survive." Lyra nodded, exhaustion giving way to renewed determination. The Alliance would need to rebuild, to strengthen, and to expand. The shadow would return, but now they had a strategy, a network, and the experience to fight smarter, not just harder. She looked at the multiverse through the threads of light in her mind. Worlds shimmered faintly, some bright and strong, others fragile but holding on. Each pulse was a story, a life, a potential for change. And Lyra understood that the work ahead would require not just courage and knowledge, but patience, empathy, and the willingness to sacrifice. As the shadow faded into the void, Lyra whispered to the multiverse, "We will not falter. We will light the darkness, one world at a time." The multiverse had changed. Worlds that had once been isolated now pulsed with faint threads of connection. Lyra and her alliance had grown stronger, their understanding deeper, yet the shadow lingered, a reminder that the battle was far from over. Lyra spent long cycles studying the threads, mapping the connections, and identifying worlds that were most ready to embrace change. She realized that the network could not simply defend, it had to grow, to strengthen itself from within. Only then could the shadow be truly challenged. Cairo and the other allies worked tirelessly alongside her. Together, they trained new partners from the worlds they had stabilized, teaching them to sense the threads, to harmonize their intentions, and to send pulses of light with precision and empathy. The network expanded exponentially, creating a lattice of conscious effort that reached farther than any single being could. Yet with growth came new challenges. Some worlds resisted, not out of malice but misunderstanding. Leaders feared influence, populations doubted their intentions, and cultural differences caused confusion. Lyra learned to adapt, to approach each world uniquely, blending science, intuition, and art to communicate effectively. Every successful connection was a small victory, a spark in the growing web of light. Then, one day, the shadow returned. It was bolder, attacking multiple key worlds simultaneously. This time, however, Lyra and her network were ready. The alliance coordinated across dimensions, synchronizing pulses of light that intertwined like threads in a vast tapestry. Together, they met the shadow's assault with precision and harmony. The battle was fierce. Pulses collided in brilliant arcs, illuminating skies and minds across countless worlds. The shadow lashed out at every hesitation, every fear, every doubt. But the network held. Every being who had embraced the messenger's light contributed, creating a resonance that strengthened the defenses. In the midst of the struggle, Lyra realized the shadow had a pattern. It sought not only to destroy, but to isolate, to cut off worlds from each other, fragmenting the lattice of connection. Understanding this, she adjusted the network, weaving threads that were self-reinforcing, capable of withstanding temporary attacks and amplifying the intentions of those within them. The final confrontation approached. Lyra focused her mind, sending a pulse of light that carried not just knowledge, but the essence of the messenger's teaching: understanding, unity, and hope. It spread through the network, touching every allied world, harmonizing their efforts, and creating a resonance strong enough to confront the shadow directly. The dark tendrils recoiled, writhing against the unified light. Lyra and her allies pressed forward, guiding pulses that intertwined with the shadow, not seeking to destroy it, but to illuminate it. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the darkness began to transform. The malevolent distortions gave way to neutral patterns, and the shadow's intent shifted, weakened by the collective understanding of the multiverse. The messenger appeared briefly, a surge of radiant energy that filled Lyra's mind. "You have reached a pivotal moment," it said. "You have guided, defended, and united. Now, the multiverse is capable of sustaining itself, of resisting the shadows that threaten connection. Your work is not finished, but you have proven that light, intention, and understanding can overcome even the most persistent darkness." Lyra nodded, her mind swelling with relief and determination. The shadow was not gone, but it no longer held the same power. Worlds that had once been isolated now pulsed with life and connection, their civilizations learning from one another, growing stronger together. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to see the full impact of her efforts. The multiverse shimmered like a vast web of light, each thread a life, a world, a possibility. She understood that the messenger's work was never about a single act, but about fostering the capacity for change, growth, and unity in every corner of existence. And as the first stars of a new cycle rose across countless skies, Lyra whispered a promise: "We will continue. We will nurture this light. Every world, every life, every choice matters. The multiverse will thrive, and we will ensure it." The multiverse had never felt so alive. Threads of light shimmered between worlds, carrying knowledge, empathy, and shared intention. Lyra stood at the center of her laboratory, now a hub for the vast network she had helped build. The alliance had grown beyond anyone's imagination, encompassing beings from hundreds of worlds, each contributing to the harmony they had nurtured together. The shadow had been weakened, but not destroyed. Lyra understood that darkness was a part of existence, a force to be acknowledged rather than eradicated. Its presence reminded the multiverse of its fragility, of the constant need for vigilance, compassion, and unity. And now, with the network firmly established, they were ready. Lyra and Cairo, along with the alliance, coordinated one final series of pulses. These pulses were not defensive, they were affirmations of life, creativity, and connection. They flowed through worlds like rivers of light, weaving civilizations into a tapestry of understanding. The shadow resisted at first, lashing out with dark currents and distortions. But each pulse of light was stronger, more precise, and imbued with collective intention. The network had learned, adapted, and grown. Slowly, the darkness transformed, its chaotic energy harmonizing with the threads instead of opposing them. Where fear and hesitation had once allowed it to strike, courage and cooperation now guided it into balance. Across countless worlds, beings felt the change. Cities stabilized, oceans calmed, Forests flourished, and minds opened to the interconnectedness of all existence. Knowledge and empathy flowed freely, and civilizations began to communicate not just through light, but through shared understanding and experience. Lyra felt a warmth in her mind, a gentle pulse that was unmistakably the messenger. "You have done more than I could have expected," it said. "You have become the light itself, guiding the multiverse toward understanding. Change is never absolute, but the seeds you have sown will endure across countless worlds." "I couldn't have done it alone," Lyra replied. "The Alliance, the worlds themselves, they carried the light with me. We all did this together." The messenger shimmered, its presence radiant and serene. "Remember this," it said. "Light is more than illumination. It is the recognition of connection, the courage to act, and the compassion to guide. You have proven that even the smallest intention, when combined with others, can change the fate of worlds. The multiverse is alive with possibility because of you." And then, the messenger receded into the infinite expanse, leaving Lyra and her network with a gift far greater than power or knowledge: the ability to nurture, guide, and inspire across all worlds. In the following cycles, Lyra visited the world she had once feared she could not save. She saw societies thriving in unexpected ways, exchanging knowledge, art, and empathy. Children of different planets learned from each other, sharing dreams and stories that spanned light years. Even the shadow remained, not as a threat, but as a subtle reminder that vigilance and unity were eternal responsibilities. Lyra knew the work would never truly end. The multiverse would continue to grow, evolve, and face challenges. But now, she understood the true power of the messenger's gift. Change was not a solitary act. It was a collaboration, a dance of intention and light that could shape countless worlds for the better. As she looked up at the stars of her own world, she felt the pulse of connection flowing through her, through the Alliance, through every world she had touched. And she smiled, knowing that the future was bright, not because it was free of darkness, but because every being now had the ability to carry the light. The quantum messenger had spoken, and through Lyra, it had become more than a single voice. It had become a chorus, a living resonance that would continue to shape the multiverse. One pulse, one world, one life at a time. And somewhere, in the infinite expanse of the multiverse, light continued to move, speaking silently to all who were willing to listen.